JavaScript on the client versus JavaScript on the server. Hey folks, my name is Burr Collin, and in this video, we're going to look at the difference between JavaScript on the client and JavaScript on the server. When we say JavaScript on the client, what we're usually referring to is a web browser. Now, it could be a native application written with something like React Native or Electron, but for the most part, we mean the web browser. Now, when you're writing JavaScript for the browser, all you need is a script tag in your page, and then you can put your JavaScript inside of that script tag. But normally you don't want to put JavaScript directly in the page. You want to put it in separate files so that it's easier to maintain. To do that, you put it in a file with a .js extension, and then you use the same script tag, but you're going to specify this src attribute and point it to the script file. This is called the source attribute, and this will load the script file into the page when the page loads. JavaScript that is running in a web browser is usually being written to build some sort of a user interface. And as such, JavaScript running in a web browser has access to something called the document object model. You'll hear people refer to this as the DOM. The DOM is just the functions and objects that JavaScript has access to in the web browser. So for instance, you could use something called the document object, which is an object that just magically exists when you're running JavaScript in a web browser, and then call the getElementById method, which will return an HTML element that has that ID. And then you could do something to that element with JavaScript, like change the color. When you write server-side JavaScript, the game changes a little bit. When you're writing server-side JavaScript, you're usually not building a user interface, you're writing some sort of a web service or service in general. Then things like reading and writing files or interacting with a database, these are server-side tasks. And in order to run JavaScript on the server, you're going to need something called Node.js. Since you don't have any web browser on the server or script tags, you'll have to install this thing called Node.js on the server. And then you can execute any JavaScript file by calling node and then your script file directly from the terminal or your command line. Now again, Node.js is not a web browser. It has no visual components. So that document object model, that DOM that you have in the browser, doesn't exist in Node.js. What you get instead is something called packages. Now, some of these packages are built into Node itself. These would be things like being able to interact with the file system. And there is a repository of third-party packages called npm, which contains a package for just about anything you can think of, including one that will calculate how many pizzas you need depending on how many people you have. Isn't JavaScript spectacular? To summarize, JavaScript running in the web browser uses script tags and is primarily used for building user interfaces and interacting with the user interface elements in a page called the document object model. JavaScript running on the server requires Node.js to be installed and is usually used for things like building web services.